It was the story that I held it with me for a long time. It was the story that involves the death of my grandfather. His death was haste. Nobody in the family could further discuss about him, about his death. Every time his death was mentioned, everybody would avoid the conversation, eyes averted away, a smile would disappear, and even a look that says, "The audacity." Grandpa died a long time ago. He fell in an accident, alone, left unattended, and found a day after. Grandma left the house abruptly, going to my aunt for an emergency, helping my aunt's dog giving a birth. It was afternoon when Grandma left the house. She finished her birthing late at night, then considered to spend the night at my aunt's. At that space of time, Grandpa fell and nobody helped him. God knows how long he was there all alone, struggling, dragging himself across the house, seeking for help. Or maybe it was a quick fall where he landed on the floor and immediately, peacefully died. But in the end, nobody knows how he left. His body was found near the front door, lying on the floor, lifeless. It was kind of an irony, I guess, where Grandma left for an emergency, for the new life of pups, only to leave Grandpa alone to his death, alive for life. After it happened, Grandma was never been the same. She cuts off all of us, minimalized any type of interaction, to say the least. She isolated herself in that same house years after years. She wouldn't leave the house for any reasons. All of us must move on, until one day afterwards, she's all alone living in that house. Who was devastated the most was my aunt. Such weight of guilt was on her, but everybody in the family agreed it wasn't about someone's fault. It was hardly a blaming game. It was a celestial time that can be bothered or intervened. When it's time to go, it's time to go. Anybody will say it in the funeral. But it's hard not to want to know how a horrendous event dominoed from the first place. But with all the comfort was given to our family, Grandma was still in the same state. So, at first month, every weekend, I visited her. That act alone has comforted everybody in the family. Every time I went, I was sure that I got anything I needed to get there. It's an hour trip to get to Grandma from my house. We live in the same town. Grandma was very happy when I went there. She would ask me to do things that she couldn't do alone. And as weeks goes by, it becomes a weekly routine, as Grandma would reserve the chore which only can be done by me. Me, a young male who's body able to do things that an old woman can't. Change the light bulb, mowing the grass, taking the Chinese plates out of the highest cabinet. All of it, I guess. I don't mind it though. It's the only thing I could do for Grandma. Weeks turn into months, and as time goes by, I too didn't visit Grandma as much as I can. I graduated high school and leave for college. For nearly a year, I never visited Grandma, or even alone, my family. I was so caught up in my college years that I even used my holidays and semester breaks for extra campus activity. It's good that I found something I like to do, my father told me. It was the period that a young man paved the way to begin his career by focusing on something I like. As Dad said, it was never a problem that I spent most of my time away from family. But that wasn't the problem though. I was worried about Grandma. Sure, time to time father visited her, and sure, he always replied the same thing. Grandma's fine, don't you worry about a thing. If we can't go home now, it's okay, we got Grandma. That worries me more. As those first months after Grandpa's departure, I get along with Grandma. There's a new type of bond I had with her. So in some way, father's perceptions of okay would be different than mine. I had to get back to Grandma somehow. As another semester passes by, I have dedicated this time to finally get home to Grandma. It was a trip home with great expectations. It was more than a year that I never set a foot in my hometown, and most of all, to see how Grandma's doing. The little family reunion was fine, but my mind was always on Grandma. I wanted to know how she recuperated. The day finally came when it was all scheduled for her. As I reached there, she hugged me very tightly. Her smile was way big. It was a genuine smile that I thought would never see again. We spent the day telling how my new life was in college. At the evening, she asked me to come back again. A few days later, she needed me to do one last chore, she said. One last chore? I asked myself. I didn't bother to ask again what was this last chore she's talking about. As I am going back again a few days later, I just smiled and waved her goodbye. That day has come when I have to do the one last chore. It turns out Grandma wanted to clean the storage room. She said it was time to get rid of the unused stuff. It's another way to say to get rid of Grandpa belongings. This was a remarkable progress. It was a phase for recovery, and I'm very happy for her. Most of the stuff are already outside. There's boxes of written papers. It was Grandpa's note on his thesis. Grandpa was a chemist. All I could see is chart and table. He was a smart man. His wit was sharp until his last days. He could spend time without end reading. I found boxes of old monthly science magazine. If Grandpa was still here, he would be furious throwing these away. Then I move on to old Grandma's stuff. Lots of her stuff was eaten by termite, so that was sure to go away. I walked inside and called her. She was there wearing her dust mask. Lots of weird trinkets scattered all over the floor. Few of them I knew well. It was my childhood toys. She wanted to surprise me by showing them all neatly collected one by one. Nevertheless, I have to throw them away. For Grandma, for her new life. I took all the stuff from the living room to outside. Then Grandma told me to go to the storage room as there were more old stuff to throw away. There, I found more boxes. But what interested me was there's an old pocket clock I found from inside the box with the writing on it. It turns out it was Grandpa's. He had this knack to fix everything rather than to waste money sending them to repair shop. Every time Grandma wanted to throw broken things away, he would told her not to do it. But in the end, he'll just gather into a big mess of old broken things piled in some corner of the house. So Grandma would take a box, put all the things he intended to fix, and wrote on it in big capital letters, "Fix it." Of course, Grandpa would fix them all, and he always did. But when all things eventually broke all together, It does tend to pile up, but she never bothered the fix-it box, as it was the only thing that makes him occupied. Tinkering made him happy. I remember it well, that pocket clock, as it was handed from his father and before him, generations to generations, and I guess it's mine now. I will surely treasure this. Time passes by so fast. With all the catching up to discuss with Grandma, the sun has already set. It was hardly doing anything there. Most of the chores was already done by her before I even reached there. She wanted to meet me. That's all that matters. Honestly, I wanted to ask more about Grandpa, but never have I found the appropriateness to ask about him, even after all these years. She asked me to stay for dinner. Of course I obliged. I even wanted to propose to stay for the night, and I did. That made her very happy. After the dinner, I went to the guest room. Essentially, it was my room for holidays. I remember it well. I always used to open the door every time when we spent the night here on holidays. I didn't want to miss anything when everybody stayed here. Late at night, my cousin would stay up gathering and making midnight snacks. This night, I would still open the door, just in case Grandma needed me. Grandma's room was across my room. It was 9 p.m., but it's already dead silent as I stay late browsing the internet. After a while, without checking the time, I closed my eyes and left myself to fall asleep. Then, a noise woke me up. It was late at night. It was loud thud that woke me up. It was too dark to see what's happening, as my eyes wasn't adapted yet in the dark. And all I could do is stay awake and stare outside the room as my eyes slowly gained visions in the dark. As I lay my gaze upon through the open door, I saw nothing. I could have sworn I heard something so loud it woke me up. Then I remembered Grandma. Could it be her? I jumped out of bed and ran across the living room. I saw nothing. It was silent and empty. I wanted to check on her, but her room was closed. I held the doorknob and turned it. It was locked. Then I sit in the living room sofa and contemplate if I should check on her or not. Then I felt a light nudge in my pocket. I checked. It was Grandpa's pocket clock. As I pressed the button to open it and checked the hour, the needle hour shows 2:35. Then I checked the living room time. The needle hour matched. I looked again at the pocket clock and remembered him. Remembered where he died. Then a light scraping, dragging sound, so slow, moving behind me. I couldn't move, as it frightens me. What frightens me the most was that the whole idea just snapped inside my head. The idea which reminded me the unthinkable thing that no one would talk about, the death of Grandpa. As the sound getting closer to me, I closed my eyes and held tight the pocket clock. Each second the dragging sound moves. 1, 2, 3, 4. It drags steadily as each second counts. Then, as the sound went furthering away from me, it stopped. Then I turned my head slowly to the point where it stopped. Then it hits me. That was the spot where Grandpa was found dead. The precise spot where he died in front of the front door. I looked again at Grandma's door. The first instinct I wanted to do is quickly bang her door. But I was too afraid to give her another bad news. As of today, she seemed so happily cleaning the storage room, a sign she has moved on. She doesn't need this, especially now. So I hurried back to my room, shut the door, and tightly closed my eyes. The next morning, my mood was so changed. I was afraid and mystified at the same time. I couldn't say anything about it. I ate breakfast with Grandma, and this time it was more like an interrogation than a discussion with her. She kept questioning, and I answered her briefly. As the silence took over the room, I gathered the courage to ask about Grandpa. Then I asked her. At first, I should ask about something that doesn't remotely mention about his death. Then I remembered the pocket clock. I asked her the significance it had with Grandpa. She looked at me wholeheartedly and answered that was the last thing he tried to repair. He used to take it with him everywhere he go. At times he would took it out of his pocket and checked whether it's still working. Sometimes it kept ticking. A brief smile would come across his face, then he put it back to his pocket. But other times it stopped. Then Grandpa would tinker it again and again. It was found inside his pocket when he died. Then I stared at Grandma's eyes. That's the only thing that I tried to avoid, and now I directly brought it up to her again. As I wanted to stand and say sorry to her, she held my hands and just smiled. Her glance spoke to me very clearly. It says, "It's okay." As she left to clean the dishes, I looked again at the hour needle of the pocket clock. It's still 2:35. Could it be he died at that time? Did she heard what I heard? There was so much thing I wanted to say and asked her, but her sincere glance that she just gave me answered it all. It's okay to ask about Grandpa's death. Or it's okay. I heard him nearly every night.